Here's some more medications. Natglinonide, if not taken at every meal, hypoglycemia is a risk. And there's a warning on this medication that if you miss taking it at a meal, you can't just take it at the next one. You need to get back on a schedule because this is actually a very touchy medication. So there's a warning to be careful if you're going to be using natglinonide. Orlistat, it can reduce absorption of some vitamins. So this medication is best if taken with multivitamin as well. Pioglitazone, fluid retention and increase of body fat. And repaglinonide, if not taken at every meal, hypoglycemia is a risk. And so that is the same as this natglinonide, where you need to be careful. You need to be careful, or you need to make sure that you take it every single meal. Here's some specific medications and related side effects. There are different types of insulin that can be injected into a diabetic, and here are the different types. Humalog and Novorapid, this is a rapid-acting insulin. Humulin R and Novolin RE Taranto, this is a short-acting insulin. Humulin N and Novolin GR NPH is an intermediate-acting insulin. Lantus and Levemir are extended-acting insulins. Humalog mix 25, Humulin, and then the ratio 20/80, 30/70, and Novoglin GE, and then all these ratios 10/90, 20/80, 30/70, 40/60, 50/50. These are all pre-mixed insulins. This is the impact that the disorder may have, as well as medication side effects that will affect an elderly's ability to participate in recreation and leisure pursuits. So the selective diet of a diabetic really does affect their leisure interests, whether they're in a long-term facility and they're wanting to participate in therapeutic recreation, or if they're just a kid and they're wanting to hang out with some friends, because diabetics need to be careful how much sugar, alcohol, salt, and carbohydrates they eat throughout the day. So an example of this from my personal life is I have a diabetic friend, and we were all going to the ice cream shop, and it was one of those ones where you got to put all these toppings on it, and he was only allowed to have a plain ice cream because he couldn't have that much sugar, because he had already had a lot of sugar that day. Also, some common side effects of diabetic medication are flatulence and gas, and this may prevent the diabetic from participating in leisure and recreation because of embarrassment or fear of embarrassment or of insecurity. Ways that a therapeutic recreation specialist can adapt aquatic exercises and horticulture programs. So we're going to start with aquatic exercises. The rec therapist can adapt exercises to be easier to accommodate the energy levels of the diabetic. So this is just because, as I mentioned before, diabetics have an increased level of energy, and this is because the insulin is not bringing the glucose to the cells to be used to create energy, and so they also need to be careful how much they are exercising, because they don't have that energy that maybe someone who doesn't have diabetes does, so this needs to be monitored. That's my next point. The rec therapist must monitor a diabetic throughout the program because diabetics, they also have a higher risk for heart attack and stroke, so that needs to be taken into account as well. The rec therapist needs to make sure that the diabetic takes breaks throughout the program, and this will be done by the rec therapist using his or her clinical judgment of when this is necessary. So an example of how you could do this is if you're struggling to monitor your diabetic in, let's say, a group of 10 people, and you have one diabetic and you're having difficulty making sure that they are doing okay and that their energy is up and that they aren't looking as though they need a break, you can take periodic breaks and just to make sure that you're assessing that client and making sure that they're okay to keep going. The rec therapist can also adapt the environment by hosting the program in shallow water, and this is to eliminate the risk of drowning should a heart attack, stroke, or collapse because low energy occur. And hopefully the rec therapist is monitoring good enough that this won't happen, but it's good to take that preventative measure just in case. Horticulture. So as I mentioned earlier, blurred vision is a a symptom of having diabetes. It doesn't occur all of the time, like 24/7 for a diabetic, but if they're really low on their sugar levels, blurred vision will occur. So if a diabetic is experiencing blurred vision but still wants to participate in a horticulture program, the rec therapist needs to ensure that there are no sharp tools throughout the program. And so these can be little things like shovels or even plant pots like that might have sharp edges. They just need to be aware of the risks involved there for someone who cannot see quite well. And they can modify these programs by not using tools and by doing programs that you don't need to use tools, so that they don't look like the odd one out and they feel like they don't have a disability here. So programs for horticulture where you don't need to use these risky tools are potting plants, so just putting a plant in a pot, drying herbs, or watering the garden. So just things where you take out those objects that could harm a resident with blurred vision. Associations, support groups, agencies, and programs. So I found the main part of these support groups, association, agencies, and programs through Alberta Health Services. Just on their website, they have a great resource for people with diabetes. So I'll just read them off here. Diabetes Client Information and Support Line. So this is just a line that they can call in if they have some questions or they want some help or they're feeling a little lost at what to do here. Diabetes Education, Diabetes Education Center, Diabetes Education and Management Clinic, Diabetes Information and Advice Line, Diabetes Insulin Pump Clinics, Diabetes Prevention and Wellness Program. So in the first little bit there's a lot of education and information, which I think is really important because, as I mentioned earlier, people with type 2 diabetes don't always know that they have it. So I think it might be kind of difficult for them once they finally do discover that they have it, because they might not know that much about diabetes or how it's treated or what they do next. So there's lots of education and there's lots of information and advice and support and even just how to prevent diabetes. And so this can be really good for people with pre-diabetes because it teaches them how to fight it, how to get out of it, and how to prevent it. There's just some more here. The diabetes program, diabetes specialty care, diabetes transition services, diabetes in pregnancy clinic, so that's good for people with gestational diabetes that probably don't know that much about it. Diabetes hypertension and cholesterol services, diabetes clinic, diabetes foot clinic, and this is, as I mentioned earlier, that sores on the feet can happen because of prolonged diabetes, so a foot clinic to deal with that. And then also a really good association that I used for my paper, for this presentation, and just for learning a lot about diabetes is the Canadian Diabetes Association. So their website is just diabetes.ca, and it's an excellent tool for information on diabetes, ranging from medication, support groups, research, healthy living, and ways to get involved in the diabetic community. So if there's someone who has diabetes, and I just found the medication was really great on that website because they had a PDF file that you just pull up, and it had a list of every diabetic medication available in Canada, and what is in the medication, what the medication does inside of your body, how you're supposed to use it, things you should know. So it had a list of side effects for every medication, and then it had it had questions that you should ask your doctor about every single medication. Support groups. If you go on the Canada Diabetes Association website and you just type in support groups in their little search, it comes up with a list of diabetes support groups for people that feel like they don't have the support that they need, and there's a list, and you can just find a one that's close to you if you're needing that. There's lots of research, healthy living, and ways to get involved in the diabetic community. And I thought this diabetic community one was kind of interesting as well.